Sheriff Brad Kunkel has joined us, and thanks. I know you're busy
Short
today.
notice.
And
Sheriffing's very busy, as we all know.
Squeezing us between your appearances. I know you just had a news conference down at the, was it at the courthouse or was it the jail?
The sheriff's office.
Sheriff's office, okay. And we obviously were here, so we didn't get to see or hear any of it. So why don't you kind of sum up what you talked about today?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the reason I had a press conference is simply as, as you know, yesterday I informed the supervisors I was no longer interested in supporting or pursuing a joint law enforcement facility, and had a lot of follow-up media requests, and so I thought it'd just be better to kind of have everybody in the same room, give everybody the same chance to answer questions at the same time, and but doesn't work for you guys because you're on the air, so thought I'd come down. But essentially, what I started the press conference with was just a quick reminder or brief history lesson about how we got to this point, going back to, the building we're in was opened in 1981. The bed count back then was built with 46 beds, double bunked in around 1990 to 92 beds. However, we only house, our operational capacity is 65, so that's the number we cap in the building based on the inmate population, the confines that we have, and how we have to classify people. We just can't pack people in there. So we cap it at 65, remainder housed out of county. We still average around 20 a day housed out of county. I think yesterday we maybe had 23. And then for some other context, when the building was built, we had around 50 or so full-time employees. Today we have 103 and a half full-time employees, 4 part-time employees. So there's just kind of the background of the building. But the kind of the short story and how we got to this point is I came into office in 2021. In 2022, the county conducted a facilities audit of all the county buildings, including the sheriff's office. The results of that independent audit were basically the recommendation was that the building needed to be replaced. They have a scoring system. Anything over 60% was considered very poor condition. The building, according to that auditor, was 104.8%. And that I believe it was in that report. There was a mention in there about concerns about the structural integrity. So the following year, the state jail inspector came for the annual jail inspection, and during his visit, he mentioned the same thing in his report: concerns about structural integrity. Ordered us to have a integrity assessment done of the building by an engineer. We hired a local company. They came in, provided that evaluation. We filed with the Iowa Department of Corrections, and they highlighted the same concerns, some significant structural concerns. They stopped short of saying there were imminent dangers. However, these are some serious concerns that need to be addressed. We subsequently followed or continued working with that company. They've been doing ongoing monitoring of the building since then. So they have measurement prisms on the outside, crack gauges on some spots inside, and the idea is to see whether and to what degree is the building moving, and is it related to the extremes of the weather in Iowa, or is it something more concerning? I brought all those concerns and attentions to the supervisors. I think that was the latter part of 23. And we had an open meeting where we, discussed this, brought it to their attention. We budgeted $75,000 to have a space study done. We hired Shive Hattery to conduct the space study. They identified the building needs that would not only be appropriate for today, but for the next 30 to 40 years, was a new sheriff's office and jail that was about 101,000 square feet, including a 140-bed jail facility. Around the same time, the city of Iowa City was conducting a similar study for the Civic Center and Police Department with some of the same concerns: space needs, aging building. And eventually there came a point where the responsible thing to do was, is there an opportunity here for the city and the county to work together to partner on a joint facility? One, it would meet both of our needs, and two, under Iowa law, a joint city-county building only needs a 50% approval from the voters. So it was a unique opportunity that had under Iowa code, provided a great chance for success. And as we know, in the past, the last 2 referendums that we did for the sheriff's office and jail got more than 50%. It didn't hit the 60% under the Iowa state code. So it was an interesting opportunity, and what also made it uniquely appealing is as we started discussing it, we have criminal justice coordinating committee that meets monthly to openly discuss these things, and the city has been included in that because one of the other appealing things about it is the city owns property at Highway 6 and Riverside Drive, so you don't have acquisition costs. So we started evaluating that. Shive Hattery was ultimately, they contracted and agreed to work with OPN, who did the city study, to basically combine those two studies and look at, can the Iowa City Police and the Sheriff's Office be roommates? Can they live and work in the same building and have it attached to the county jail? So that's what we've been discussing. The price tag ultimately on a joint facility came in at around $106 million. So that's kind of the backstory, if you will. And this has been, very well covered for the last 3 years, really. And so then recently we had a meeting with the city of Iowa City, the supervisors and the city council. We had a joint public meeting where to formally discuss and ask if they're interested in pursuing a joint facility. And, there were a lot of good questions and some discussion that happened at the meeting, things that maybe nobody had even thought about or things that needed to be discussed. And then Tuesday night, the Iowa City Council had an open discussion about it in their meeting, and I encourage you to watch it just to have some understanding of the discussion and the comments. But late yesterday afternoon, I sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors just informing them after the last couple of meetings, I don't see where there's a viable path forward for a joint facility, and I'm no longer interested in pursuing that. And I think it's in the best interest of the county to pursue a standalone facility.
Well, okay, what triggered it? What was it about that you specifically changed on this?
A couple things. One of the things that came out of the meeting from Tuesday was the location was off the table. The mayor had strong feelings about it, and I respect his opinion and position. But if the location is no longer an option, now we're back to having to find property that somebody would have to purchase. Who's going to purchase it? How much is it going to cost? And I don't think anybody has. It's probably not going to be easy to find 15 acres of property within the city limits of Iowa City, which is a statutory requirement for a joint facility, that would be amenable to everybody, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So again, if the location is off the table, then I don't. That's one reason I don't. And I respect the position.
Maybe you could explain that, because that's the first I couldn't cover the meeting. I was busy with something else. But what is the reasoning for not using that land that the city already owns? If people don't know, it's that land that's right between Riverside Drive and the Iowa River, like where the Iowa City Transit, like the bus, where they store the buses and stuff. That's the area where. Why is that off the table for Iowa City?
That's not a question for me to answer. I don't know.
Oh, they didn't tell you? Okay.
Again, it was, if you watch the meeting, that point was made very clearly. And that's just not a question I'm in a position to answer. But that's their decision. I respect the mayor's position and thoughts on that piece of the matter. But one of the other thing I think, as I watch the meeting, when I see elected officials making statements and comments about law enforcement in general, I have to think about what's in the best interest of the office I was elected to serve and the people that work for me in throughout my entire office. And I don't want to say it. I don't see. I don't think there's a partnership to be had with elected officials who don't have any value for law enforcement or what they do.
And they I know some of them, okay, and I've seen them, and I did watch part of that meeting after I talked to you yesterday. There was no respect, and I don't understand. Your building is crumbling. I don't know how else to put it. We've been in there, and I've seen the cracks, and I've seen the leaks, and I've seen the conditions. and they want these. There's two lies. Number one, I didn't see any college kids there. I was there in the afternoon. I didn't see any college kids with pot, or I saw dangerous people in there. And I'm not scared easily because I'm not that bright. But there's people in there, spousal abusers and robbers, and they won't accept it. I mean, I got sick of these people they don't need jail, they need counseling. They need jail, and if you can give them counseling in jail, if they haven't learned their lesson by ending up in jail.
Yeah, and I didn't take, there's a separate discussion there about the jail itself. And I say that because the function, operation, and oversight of the jail is solely a county responsibility. In fact, the Iowa Code clearly even lays out a boundary within county government about that. It says the county, as in the supervisors, shall provide the place, and then it goes on to say in a different code section, the jails in the state are in the charge of the respective sheriffs. It's very straightforward. So the idea that there's input or thoughts or whatever about the capacity or anything in the jail, that's a non-starter. That's squarely a county decision. So I won't, and I don't really want to speak to their anybody else's opinions about the capacity or anything like that. What I'm talking about is I have to think about the agency that I was elected to represent, and the folks that work there, and do I think it's in their best interest to have a in this long-term contractual relationship with elected officials who don't devalue what they do and the job that they're sworn to do. And so I'm and just for those reasons, I'm out. I'll pass. I don't think this is in the best interest of the county. I think a standalone facility is, and I think it's a great path to move forward. And I'm confident that as we go down that road, we'll have a successful referendum. And
you'll get 60%.
I think so. Yeah, I really think we will. And I think it's the right decision. And because one of the reasons we even went down this road, we had to rule this in or out. It was the responsible thing to do, is evaluate, is this something that is a viable option? And I no longer think it is.
Who paid? Because I'm asking a further question on this. Who paid for the survey that was done? Was it the county and the city? Or
no,
just
the
just
county.
the county? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you did the survey with Shive Hattery.
The space study was with Shive Hattery.
Okay.
The survey was with the University of Iowa.
Okay. But the Shive Hattery one said you need this many beds. Here's what we think.
Right.
And it gave you recommendations on things like that.
Correct.
And then you went to the county, and you had at least one supervisor say, that's too many beds. Even though this outside agency said, this is what you're going to need for this community going forward. Plus, keeping in mind, those extra beds were considering the future growth of this area down the road. Because you're not just building this for next year, you're building it for 20 years down the road.
Right.
So when they said, what was it, 160 beds or
140?
140. 140. Mm-hmm. And some people think that's too many.
Yes.
Even though the survey said that's what we need.
Yeah, but you got to remember, anytime there's a discussion about jails, that's always what it comes down to, is the capacity. And, and you're getting into how people, what people believe about incarceration and the laws. And I mean, and those are, there's fair points to be made, and there's respectful dialogue to have. I don't know if maybe some folks they're always going to be in an impasse. I don't know. I think as long as we can have, respectful and informed conversations about it, I think we're doing our job. Obviously, my position on the capacity and the preparation for the future, and standing that up alongside the growth of the county and the changing face of law enforcement and our ability to detect and prosecute things like child sex abuse and really anything involving technology. Technology is leading to more and more successful criminal cases. But I also have to think about things like excuse me, legislative changes, things outside of my control that would affect the jail population, like last session there was some proposed legislation or discussion about raising the bond schedule for like certain forcible felonies. If the state decided to raise bond on certain charges, that inherently means more people will wind up in jail because they won't be able to post bond. That's outside of my control. I have to be responsible about making sure I'm prepared for those kinds of things if they come. The whole nature of my job as the sheriff and being in law enforcement is being prepared and doing what's in the best interest of everybody in the county, because I was elected by the people of the entire county.
See, the problem you have, and that the opposition sometimes will light on, is the big news stories about police forces that run amok.
Sure.
Which are, if you examine, in any 1 month, are very few and far between. But they paint a broad picture of all law enforcement. ICE raids aren't helping with that, and law enforcement becomes, in a certain segment of the population, the enemy, and it's not.
Yeah, and think of it as that same type of behavior of taking one instance and using that as the catalyst for broad opposition. That's just a symptom of hyperpartisanship on both sides of the spectrum. I mean, we all see that regardless of the issue, is grabbing an instance you're talking about and using it as the opportunity. This is why we're going to demonize law enforcement and pick another issue that is pick what you're always going to see those things. And I have to think about what the scope of what the job of the sheriff and the sheriff's office is, and that is public safety, and that is law enforcement, and doing it in a objective and nonpartisan way. And I know we uphold our end of the bargain at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office every single day, and we have to remember that that's always where we start from, is what were we sworn to do, and doing it fairly. And I don't have time for hyperbole and people who aren't acting in good faith. So I need to move my office forward.
One thing that kind of baffled me with the Iowa City meeting was the counselors who said, well, this is just your way to try to sneak it through at 50% when normally it needs 60%. I thought, so you're basically just out there saying you don't want this to pass. You want it more difficult to pass, which kind of threw me for a loop. But I don't know. Sometimes things don't surprise me too.
I mean, all I will say is the idea of a joint facility and the appeal of 50%, that is not a secret. We have been talking about that the entire time.
Like you were trying to sneak it in like a loophole or something.
That's ridiculous. If anything, it's like somebody once said to me, it's creative problem solving within the rules. And that's all it is. Yeah. And, you've seen this be successful.
Well, it's a rule for a reason too.
That's right. So I don't think that of finding a way within the scope of the law to provide a good solution for local government I just don't think that's out of bounds. I think that's a responsible way to do business. And but like I said a little bit ago at the press conference, the other thing to keep in mind is the county's in a bit of a more urgent position than the city, and our urgency is not theirs. And so it is fair for the city to take a position like, well, this seems rushed, and I understand that. We are in a bit more of a time crunch, because if you start from, when's election day next year? November
5th?
I don't know.
6th.
And work your way back. We have a lot, was it Jerry Reeves that said it? We have a long way to go and a short time to get there. And that's the reality. And
they're going to do what they say can't be done, which in retrospect is probably not.
He was running from the law, though. I don't know that's
a good point, too.
The irony of that is even greater.
Big semi full of Coors Light shows up in front of the jail.
Like I said, at the end of the day, this is I think this is the right decision. And
Well, if you can't get the land, it is the right decision.
I mean, that's a factor. I mean,
Is that the big? Would you say that's probably the big thing is getting the land that's causing you to say this isn't going to work out?
Or is it a combined thing
Yeah,
with
probably.
the attitude of some of the people making the decisions?
It's some of both. And like I said, I think the timeliness is a factor too. There's a lot of negotiation that would have to happen to get to a point where we had agreed upon bylaws for the entity that would oversee the building itself. And I don't see where we're going to have a place where we can either agree to or find it within the time frame that we have. It's there, as I mentioned to the press a while ago. There's just too many kind of landmines there that I don't think we'll ever come to an agreement on. And it makes more sense to put a stop to this piece of the process now and move in the direction that I think is in the best interest of Johnson County and everybody that lives here, from county line to county line, from Dubuque Street in Iowa City to Dubuque Street in Solon. That's my job.
So now, what switches now? What do you have to do to get into the we just need a jail mode? I mean, does a lot of stuff have to switch, or do you still have to to get the ball rolling on getting that thing on the ballot next year?
That I don't have an answer for, because the next step really is now
go back to the
supervisors. Yeah, we need to talk about this in a meeting, and this is really the discussion that we all need to start having too. I think we have we go back to the space study that we did. I think we have a great place to start from conceptually about the jail and the sheriff's office, and start trying to figure out, well, what is the path forward, and how do we go down this road and get it done within the time frame that we have. And I can't stress this enough. What we're talking about here for the needs of the county is not just the jail. It's the sheriff's office and the jail. It's the 107.5 employees total that work there, and having enough space for the jobs that everybody has to do, and the business that the public has to do, and making the right decision for the next 30 or 40 years. We have to think about what are the position we're putting elected officials in the community in decades to come.
Not taking any calls.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
So
you can dial till hell freezes over.
So
no, I appreciate you coming in here, because I called you last night, and I know you were watching Big Brother, like my wife was.
I was at youth group for a church, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounded
Big Brother, same thing.
Sounded like Big Brother to me. She was watching.
There are a lot of kids. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
But anyway, I do appreciate you
Sure thing.
coming in.
Yeah, thanks for coming in on short notice too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Go back and do whatever your 10 o'clock meeting you have, or 11 o'clock.
I
Didn't you say you had
got
10
to
o'clock?
be somewhere at 11. So
Aren't we better than the other media?
Yeah.
I love you all. You all do a good job.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.